Emily. Don't embarrass yourself by bringing that junk, Emily's mother said sharply, adjusting her designer coat in the mirror. People will laugh. Emily didn't respond. She simply tightened her grip on the old leather briefcase resting beside her feet. It had belonged to her grandfather. To everyone else, Grandpa Henry had been a quiet, unremarkable old man, no big career, no fancy lifestyle, no obvious success. After his death, the family barely mentioned him. His belongings were boxed up, labeled worthless, and pushed into storage. Except for this one briefcase. Emily had found it hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her grandfather's house. It was worn, scratched, and outdated, nothing like the sleek accessories her family valued. But something about it felt intentional. Protected. Tonight was the Carter family gala, an exclusive event celebrating her uncle's rise as a powerful real estate developer. Influential guests, investors, city officials, everyone who mattered would be there. And Emily had been warned clearly. Blend in. Don't draw attention. Don't ruin this. As they entered the grand ballroom, conversations paused briefly. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tailored suits and elegant dresses. Emily felt out of place immediately, especially with the old briefcase in her hand. Her mother leaned closer and whispered through clenched teeth. "If you open that thing tonight, don't call me your mother." Emily swallowed hard. What no one knew was that earlier that morning, she had finally unlocked the briefcase. Inside wasn't money. It wasn't jewelry. It was documents, sealed letters, official contracts, and one faded photograph that made her hands shake. Because written clearly at the top of the first page were the words, "In the event of my death, this truth must be revealed." And suddenly, Emily understood something terrifying. Her grandfather hadn't been ordinary. He had been hiding something powerful. And tonight, the truth was about to surface. Emily's heart pounded as she stood near the edge of the ballroom, the noise of laughter and clinking glasses fading into the background. The briefcase felt heavier now, not because of its weight, but because of what it carried. She hadn't planned to reveal anything tonight. But fate had other plans. On stage, her Uncle Richard raised his glass, smiling confidently as applause echoed through the room. "This company," he announced proudly, "is the result of years of sacrifice, vision, and family support." Emily felt her stomach twist. Family support. Her grandfather's face flashed in her mind, quiet, patient, always watching. Always listening. Without realizing it, Emily took a step forward. Her mother noticed immediately. Emily saw the panic in her eyes. "Sit down," her mother mouthed silently. But Emily didn't. She walked straight toward the stage. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Who's that? Isn't that Richard's niece? What's she carrying?" Richard's smile faltered when he saw her. "Emily," he said tightly, lowering his voice, "this isn't the time." Emily finally spoke, her voice trembling but loud enough to carry. "It is the time." The room went silent. She placed the briefcase on the podium and slowly opened it. From inside, she pulled out the faded photograph first and held it up. It showed her grandfather standing beside a half-built property, the same land Richard now claimed as his greatest achievement. Gasps spread across the room. Emily then laid out the documents one by one. "These contracts," she said, her voice growing steadier, "were signed decades ago. The land, the initial investment, the legal groundwork, everything came from my grandfather." Richard laughed nervously. "That's ridiculous. He was just a caretaker." Emily shook her head. "No. He was the owner." A stunned silence followed. She picked up the final envelope, the sealed letter. "I was told not to embarrass myself," Emily said, glancing briefly at her mother. "But the real embarrassment is pretending this never happened." She opened the letter and began to read. It wasn't just about money. It was about betrayal. Her grandfather had trusted his own son with the business during a difficult time. The business grew and then his name slowly disappeared from everything. Legal manipulation. Quiet erasure. A deliberate lie. By the time Emily finished reading, several guests were already pulling out their phones. A few investors whispered urgently to one another. One of the city officials stood up, his expression grim. Richard looked pale. This is fake," he stammered. "She doesn't know what she's talking about." But the documents were stamped. Verified. Signed. And then came the final blow. Emily looked straight at her uncle and said softly, "You forgot one thing, Uncle Richard." She lifted the last paper. "My grandfather never transferred ownership." The room erupted. Security stepped closer. Lawyers moved fast. The celebration was over. As chaos unfolded, Emily felt something unexpected calm. For the first time, her grandfather's silence had been broken. And the truth had finally been heard. The ballroom that once shimmered with celebration now felt like a courtroom without walls. Voices overlapped. Investors argued. Phones rang non-stop. Security guards hovered near the stage, unsure who they were supposed to protect. The banner behind the podium Carter Legacy Developments hung crooked, as if even it had lost confidence in the name it carried. Emily stood still. She didn't feel victorious. She felt awake. Across the room, her mother hadn't moved. Her face was pale, frozen between fear and shame. Emily met her eyes only once long enough to understand something painful but necessary. She knew. Maybe not everything. But enough. Uncle Richard was arguing with two men in dark suits. Lawyers, Emily guessed. His voice was low but sharp, panic cracking through his practiced authority. "This is a misunderstanding," Richard insisted. "Those documents are outdated. The company is mine. I built this." One of the lawyers didn't even look convinced. "Ownership isn't about who builds," the man replied flatly. "It's about who owns the land and the rights. And right now we have a problem." Emily felt a gentle hand touch her arm. She turned to see Mrs. Adler, her grandfather's former assistant. The woman was older now, her hair silver, her posture slightly bent, but her eyes were sharp. They always had been. "I was wondering when you'd open that briefcase," Mrs. Adler said quietly. Emily swallowed. "You knew?" Mrs. Adler nodded. "Your grandfather prepared for this moment for years. He just didn't know who would be brave enough to carry it out." Emily's chest tightened. "Why didn't he fight back?" Emily asked. "Why stay silent?" Mrs. Adler sighed. "Because the truth doesn't always win quickly. Sometimes it waits for the right voice." Before Emily could respond, a man stepped forward from the crowd, tall, composed, with the calm authority of someone used to controlling rooms. "My name is Daniel Brooks," he announced. "Senior legal counsel for Brooks and Myers." The murmurs grew louder. Emily recognized the firm. Everyone did. Daniel continued, "Our firm represented Henry Carter decades ago. We lost contact after certain internal family changes." His eyes flicked briefly toward Richard. "We will be reopening this case immediately." Richard exploded. "You can't do that. This company employs hundreds of people." Daniel met his gaze calmly. "Then perhaps you should have considered that before erasing its rightful owner." Security finally intervened, escorting Richard away from the stage as cameras flashed. His protests echoed down the hall, each word weaker than the last. Emily watched him go. She didn't feel revenge. She felt resolution beginning. 2 weeks later. The house Emily grew up in felt different now. Quiet. Heavy. Legal documents covered the dining table. Court dates. Depositions. Financial audits. Every page felt like another layer being peeled away from a lie that had been built over decades. Emily sat across from her mother, who hadn't spoken much since the gala. Finally, her mother broke the silence. "I thought I was protecting you," she said softly. Emily looked up. "By hiding the truth?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "By keeping the peace." Emily exhaled slowly. Peace built on lies isn't peace. It's just quiet damage. Her mother nodded, defeated. "Your grandfather warned me. He said one day the truth would demand a voice." Emily closed her eyes briefly. "And you chose silence." "Yes," her mother whispered. "And I was wrong." It was the closest thing to an apology Emily had ever heard. The will. When the reading of Henry Carter's updated will finally took place, the room was small and private. No cameras. No celebration. Just truth. The lawyer cleared his throat. "To my granddaughter, Emily Carter." Emily felt her hands tremble. "I leave not just what was taken from me, but the responsibility to decide what it becomes." The inheritance wasn't just land or money. It was control. Majority ownership. Final authority. Emily sat back, stunned. Her grandfather hadn't wanted revenge. He wanted restoration. Power changes how people look at you. Emily learned that quickly. When she entered a room now, conversations paused not because she demanded attention, but because people sensed certainty in her presence. The same family members who once dismissed her now watched every word she spoke, every decision she made. But power didn't excite Emily. Responsibility did. The trial lasted 3 months. 3 months of exposed emails, falsified signatures, and quiet manipulation that had been buried for decades. Richard's defense collapsed piece by piece, not because Emily pushed for revenge but because the truth no longer needed protection. On the final day, the judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Henry Carter was the rightful owner. His removal was intentional, unlawful, and sustained through deception. Richard didn't look angry when the verdict came. He looked empty. Sentenced. Disgraced. Forgotten. Emily felt no satisfaction watching him led away. Only sadness for what greed had stolen from everyone. After the fall, Carter foundations stabilized faster than anyone expected. Emily implemented changes her grandfather had once proposed but never lived to see. Fair housing initiatives. Transparent ownership structures. Employee profit sharing. People didn't follow her because of her inheritance. They followed her because she listened. One evening, Mrs. Adler visited Emily's office. She placed a small envelope on the desk. "He asked me to give you this only after everything was over," she said. Inside was a handwritten note. "Truth doesn't need noise. It only needs courage. Grandpa." Emily closed her eyes, steadying her breath. Mother and daughter. Healing didn't happen overnight. But one quiet Sunday afternoon, Emily's mother joined her on the porch, 2 cups of untouched tea between them. "I spent my life being afraid," her mother said softly. "Afraid of losing security. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of standing alone." Emily looked at her. "And now?" Her mother managed a small smile. "Now I'm proud of you. It wasn't perfect. But it was real." The briefcase. Emily never threw the briefcase away. Instead, she placed it in the company's private archive, open, visible, documented. A reminder. Not of wealth, but of what silence costs. The last scene. 1 year later, Emily stood on a stage, this time by choice. No lies behind her. No secrets beneath her feet. She addressed a crowd of employees, families, and community leaders. This company was built once on erasure, she said. Today, it stands on acknowledgement. Applause filled the hall, not forced, not polite. Earned. As Emily stepped down, she felt something settle inside her. Not victory. Not revenge. Peace. Because her grandfather's story wasn't hidden anymore. And neither was hers.